Hey, Triple Threat. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for becoming a member. That's awesome. It's hot in here today. I mean, hot out, I guess I should say. I don't know. The days are weird. One day it's cold, one day it's not. Oh, you didn't? Oh, hey, Autistic. So I'm excited to read this book. I'm gonna send you a link to come up though, and then I need you to let me know if I'm even pronouncing this man's name right. Something tells me might be wrong. There's instant reports in this and everything, so that's really cool. He lived in Ottawa. Huh. Hey, girl.
Hi, can you hear me?
So do you know? Yeah, I can hear you. How do you pronounce this man's name? Is it McCulloch? McCulloch? No.
What's the name of the book?
Oh, the book is When They Appeared. It's this one.
It's called When They Appeared?
Yeah, can you see it?
Hang on, let me go grab it. Amazon. Yes, I would like to kind of read along with you. Ooh. Sorry, what's it called? When They Come? Or,
When They Appeared. I'm showing it in the camera. Can you see it?
uh, yeah, I'm on Amazon. You have to go. Uh, yeah, barely, but I can see. I got it now. Hang on. At least now I know what it looks like. Is it got Kindle? Cool. All right. Now I shall get it so that way I can follow along.
Awesome. I just want to know how you say this man's name. Is it McCulloch? McCulloch?
Honestly, I don't
You don't know
remember.
either.
Hang on here. Why can't I get? Oh, there it is.
I think it would be Stan McCulloch, but I never checked
McCulloch?
before.
Yeah, McCulloch's I think sounds right.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. I
What's us both be wrong? Oh well.
yeah. No big deal. Where's my Kindle?
Oh, they have his original I don't know if this is a statement. What is this? The original story of my encounter with the UFO that he wrote himself, and this is it. That's cool. That was awesome. I didn't know that that would be in here. So it's his own actual writing. Wow.
All right. I got that going. Yeah, I would say McCulloch. Uh,
Okay.
okay, go ahead.
All right, I'll start. In June 1947, a businessman named Kenneth Arnold was piloting a small plane near Mount Rainier in the state of Washington in the USA. He was at about 9,000 feet over the mountains when he saw nine flying objects that he could not identify. I would freak out. Nine flying objects. Yeah, that's crazy. This was the first official report of flying saucers and is considered the beginning of the modern UFO phenomenon. Since then, literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world have reported seeing strange, unidentified flying objects. Arnold's sighting made international news headlines, and in the weeks following his experience, many sightings of saucer like craft were reported across North America. Manitoba, like any location on the continent, was not spared the onslaught of UFOs in its skies. The oldest account of an odd object over Manitoba took place in the fall of 1972. Explorers David Thompson and Andrew Davy were camped on the shore of Landing Lake near what is now Thicket Portage. The Thompson diary he recorded that one night, he and his companion were surprised by the appearance of a brilliant meteor of globular form, larger than the moon. This object seemed to move directly towards them, descended slightly, and when within 300 yards of us, it struck the river ice with a sound like a mass of jelly, was dashed in innumerable luminous pieces, and instantly expired. That sounds horrific. Thompson noted that the next morning, when they went to see the hole it should have made in the ice, they couldn't find any sign of the object's apparent impact with the earth. I've collected more than 2,000 sightings of unidentified flying objects over Manitoba, reported since that time. These reports included observations by people from all walks of life, from farmers, pilots, campers, and police. Their reports noted in the newspapers, mailed to civilian investigators, and posted to Facebook groups. Cases have been obtained from private records, RCMP files, Canadian Forces documents, and the National Archives in Ottawa. That's crazy. It's like an hour away from me. We should go bust in there. For example, on July 15th, 1947, at about 3:15 a.m. Okay, that's weird because the timestamps with the 3 o'clock in the morning thing, it happened in the other book as well. I just find that interesting. So, for example, on July 15th, 1947, at about 3:15 a.m., Winnipeg telegraph operator Homer Clinton had just returned home from a shift when he heard a noisy disturbance in his backyard. He and his wife and son ran out to watch a what's it? What's it? A what's it? A what's it? Okay, in the northwest sky near the Big Dipper. Object was star-like in appearance, but it moved on a zigzag course and would periodically flip over as it flew. The three witnesses observed the noisy object about 15 minutes before it gained altitude and was lost to sight. In Canada, official interest in reports of such unusual flying craft led to government-sponsored studies of UFOs, Project Second Story and Project Magnet. Both were relatively short-lived and were associated with a controversial electronics specialist named Wilbert B. Smith. During the course of his work in the Department of National Defense, Smith became convinced that UFOs represented alien contact. Though his view was not shared by his superiors. However, Smith claimed he had been privy to top-level meetings with both Canadian and American military personnel, and he was told at these meetings that flying saucers were considered to be of major concern to the American military. Later in his career, Smith claimed to actually have been in contact with the aliens, who had begun preliminary negotiations for an official landing at a Canadian military base. That's creepy. According to the files of the Project Second Story, on July 29th, 1952, at about 11 p.m., a witness at McDonald Airport, north of Winnipeg, watched an orange, oblong stationary object in the southwest sky for about 2 minutes. The aerial craft was about 15 degrees above the horizon and was calculated to be about 6 miles away from the airfield. As the witness watched, the craft seemed to change into a group of smaller round lights. Then they disappeared altogether. No worries, Triple. The American presence in Manitoba during the Cold War was quite significant. The 916th base near Beausejour at Milner Ridge was a major radar facility for monitoring objects flying south towards the United States.
Hang on. I kind of lost track. Oh, yeah. That is called Beausejour.
Beausejour?
Beausejour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beausejour. Okay. A former duty officer in the radar operations building there claimed that in the fall of 1956, he detected a strange object moving south over eastern Manitoba. It was a strong return, indicative of a solid object, much as an aircraft, and about 175 miles northeast of Milner Ridge. He was surprised when the second trace of the radar scope showed it had moved a great distance from the first pilot. In order to confirm the return, he checked the height and range indicator and calculated the object's altitude to be 75,000 feet. When he spotted the object again, the equipment suggested that its speed was between 6,000 and 7,500 knots, faster than any known aircraft at the time. He explained, "If I had not confirmed its location on two independent systems, I would have just passed it off as a malfunction." He tracked the object for about 10 minutes as it flew a straight course with slight changes in the direction, but always at the same altitude. The nearest it came to the base was around MacArthur Falls. He reported to the chief controller, who labeled it a malfunction. However, the radar officer was called into the controller's office the next day and instructed never to tell anyone what he had seen. And then in 1967, only 20 years after Arnold's watershed sighting, Stefan McCulloch decided to travel to Falcon Lake for a weekend of amateur prospecting. His story of encountering and getting physically injured by a strange saucer-shaped vehicle had been recounted numerous times in print and in the media, including several recreations on popular UFO-themed TV shows. He was blasted by hot gas as the craft departed, setting fire to his clothes, as well as a nearby forest vegetation. He was physically ill and had to be taken to a hospital, where doctors treated his burns, but he continued to suffer effects of his encounter and took months to recuperate. This was perhaps too much of a close encounter with a UFO. McCulloch was interrogated by the RCAF and the RCMP. He led officials to the area, where the Department of Health and Welfare found such high levels of radiation that they considered cordoning off the area out of a concern for public safety. McCulloch spent a great deal of his own money traveling to the Mayo Clinic, as it was not covered by Medicare. The physicians there could find no obvious explanation for his injuries, and a psychiatrist concluded he was not the type of person who would make up a bizarre tale. If it was a hoax, it was most contrived on record, involving radiation, contaminated soil, medical examinations, and a flurry of investigations by government officials at many levels. What's more, access to information requests and per usual records in the National Archives of Canada have uncovered as many as 100 official documents about the military and government investigations. Civilian records and reports number in the hundreds as well, helping to make the Falcon Lake case one of the best documented on record, easily surpassing some of the classic and well-known UFO cases such as Roswell and Shag Harbor. But in addition to the documents and physical evidence, there's another aspect of McCulloch's experience that is rarely mentioned. That is the enormous impact his experience had in his family, who had to endure the appearance of their doorstep of a multitude of media, military and civilian investigators, and curiosity seekers. Although McCulloch's experience had been physically painful, the discomfort and disruption created fallout from the incident resulted in emotional and mental trauma to all family members for many following years. Stan McCulloch was only 9 years old when his father had the same experience at Falcon Lake. I just said it again. Stan McCulloch was only 9 years old when his father had the experience at Falcon Lake. He remembers clearly how his life changed dramatically during the weeks and years after the event. He believes it's important to share with the public the other side of the story, and most people never get to know how a significant UFO case affects not only the primary witness, but also those who are intimately involved with the ensuing investigations and attempts to explain what had happened and what occurred. When they appeared, this book, when they appeared, tries to tell the entire story of McCulloch's experience. The book starts with Stefan McCulloch himself telling his story in his own words, in a faithful reprint of the privately published booklet that has been out of print since 1968. Then McCulloch's son Stan describes how his father's experience affected his own life and that of his mother's and his siblings. I describe in detail how the official and civilian investigations took place and the conclusions reached by the various players. I later offer my own personal view of my involvement in the McCulloch case as a science writer and investigation of unusual events. A number of official documents and images are presented that indicate how various agencies viewed McCulloch's experience, included are transcripts of some interrogations by investigators to give a more complete picture of what transpired and a peek into the minds of some of those involved. In the report of the United States government sponsored UFO project, the Condon Report, McCulloch's experience was described as unknown, implying there was no explanation for his experience. Its concluding remarks were impressive. If the case was physically real, it would show the existence of alien flying vehicles in our environment. 50 years after it happened, it is likely that many questions about the case may never be resolved. It's an interesting chapter in Canadian history, showing the interaction between officialdom and a witness to something remarkable and terrifying in the wilderness of Manitoba. When they appeared, Visitors and investigators changed the lives of McCullochs forever. And this is the author. No, it's not. Yes, it is. This is also part of the author that helped McCulloch write this book, Chris Rakowski. And that was written in March 2017. And then author's got a note down here and it says, Stefan McCulloch's first name was often anglicized to Stephen. Stephen or Steve. We have stayed faithful to his original Polish given name, Stefan, where possible, but have retained the various forms used in this book, official documents, and interviews. It would be Stefan, wouldn't it? Do you think?
Yeah, Stefan.
Okay.
My my husband's all Ukrainian, and his family on both sides. Um, so I was told that usually, if there's a ski or chuck at the end, it's either
Okay.
Polish or Ukrainian. Although my last name, and yes, I am doxing myself, Halabara. How is that Ukrainian? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I can tell you uh, if you want the stories of the good times, uh, you know,
Yeah.
there's-
Actually, I'm interested in like what you know, what's happened to you or like how this affected you or yeah,
I
actually.
didn't know about this until a couple years ago. I had seen it on one of the, um, one of the shows on, I think it's, no, which, you know how some of these, shows that they have where
Yeah, like Unsolved Mysteries or something.
yeah, those type of like aliens, they show
Yeah,
off aliens and stuff like that. Yeah, so they had
there's a few.
one on him and they explained it. So, but the thing is that when I heard that, I actually understood
Yeah.
what happened when I was, a kid. Um, I think it happened a couple times in Falcon Lake and then once in West Hawk Lake. Now, they're not far from each other. They're quite close. I believe they're like 15 minutes apart. Uh,
Oh wow.
and both are huge lakes. Now, West Hawk Lake was created by a meteor. So you gotta
Cool.
wonder. I don't know exactly where the incident happened. It happened where the rocks are. So I would believe that's closer to West Hawk Lake because that's where, I mean, we're already starting the rocks by then,
Yeah.
Rocky Hills. So yeah, that was quite scary when I would be walking in the campground and in the grass you could see two glowing dots and they moved.
Holy.
They moved. So it looked like it was eyes.
Oh.
And I mean, like, that scared me. I believe the second time, I don't know if it was the first or second time, one of my younger cousins pointed out. And of course, I got scared. He wasn't. I'm like, oh, great. I felt like such a wimp, but I kept going with them, trying to look all, tough.
Yeah.
And one time in West Hawk Lake, I remember going to the bathroom, and of course, again, red dots along the grass, but also, it moved up into the bushes. So they were
Whoa.
close to the ground, and then they moved up. I'm like, all right, I'm freaked out.
Yeah, I would have too. Definitely.
That's basically all I remember.
Yeah.
But I mean, you imagine the oldest I was last time I went to Falcon Lake. I was in my teens, and by then I, you know, was too busy with, you know, uh, partying or shit like that. So I didn't really
Yeah.
notice it. But as a younger kid and my early teens before I started partying, I was freaked out. I mean,
Yeah.
especially when you have your dad who, my grandfather was a scientist. And
Oh, neat.
yes, he actually was captured or whatever you call it with Nazis, and they were trying
Oh,
to
no.
make him help them create what is it, the B bomb or whatever it was. So
Oh, wow. That's scary.
luckily my family, my dad, and my dad was 6 when the war ended. They escaped and
Mhm.
made their way out. My dad obviously was. I don't know if his sister was born yet, but they got out when he was 3 because he had been living in. Um, I don't know if it's Italy, I believe, but they had made their way to through a few countries because the
Mhm.
first thing they did is they got out in the dark on the rowboat.
Wow.
They were luckily somebody, I guess set that off. It was just, and then of course, they run off to Chile, and then Chile, Chile's 9/11, Tuesday 9/11.
Yeah.
Well, which is again, it's just weird. Tuesday 9/11 on 1973, and Tuesday
Yeah.
9/11 in the U.S. in
That
2001.
is weird.
Yeah, it's that is definitely weird. And
Yeah. I would agree, actually. Something with those numbers. 9/11.
yeah, I think there were other, they had all the planes. They were kind of going around with the numbers, and it's been a long time. But I kind of went into this huge rabbit hole of mine that my husband's laughing at me, going, "Whoa!" Anyway, my dad had taught me because I barely remember my grandpa, my dad's side. Like I only remember um, him saying something. Like I really don't have much memory. Whereas
Oh.
my mom's dad, I have a couple more memories. So I guess my mom's family has always been something that we've kind of been around more than my dad's. I mean, my dad's parents are, they passed away in Chile, and my grandfather, I have neither. All my grandparents, except for my grandma, passed away
Mhm.
when I was young.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, she passed away, and I don't think Stephanie was about 3 or 5. I can't remember. I'd have
Oh,
to look.
wow, that's young for her. Wow.
Well, but she was great grandma, and it was
Yeah.
nice that she got to be a great grandma for a few years. Uh, I mean, my parents, as of yesterday, are great grandpas. A
Yeah,
great,
you're saying congrats. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, nice healthy baby, 8.6 pounds, which is,
Wow.
well, that's nothing. I have,
Mine was a little 5 pounder. That was it.
yeah, well, I was 3 weeks early, and my brother was 713. I was 6'9" for twins.
Wow.
Yeah, it comes from my side. My brother's oldest, so my oldest nephew, he's the only boy in our side of the family. I was the only girl, and when I was growing up, things changed. So yeah, my
Yeah.
nephew, he was 9 pounds 2 ounces. And I worry because my sister-in-law had a lot of problems after 36 or 38 hours. They finally decided C-section. They should
Oh
have
my God, that's a long time.
they should have done it much earlier.
Well,
And
yeah, to have to suffer all that time and end up having a C-section,
yeah, I
I'd be
mean,
really
and
upset.
even though my sister-in-law is pretty skinny, she's at her weight. She looks really good. Um, her frame still should be able to handle a little bit more, uh,
Yeah.
but I guess not. And I'm hoping that my niece didn't have that issue because my sister in law had to, for 3 weeks, she would end up in hospital with severe bleeding to the point where she needed
Oh my gosh.
transfusions. That's what you get for trying to have a 9 pound, 2 ounce baby. It's not her fault, but I think my oldest brother, my mom was saying was 10 something. I'm probably wrong though. Still, we have big babies on my side of the family, my mom's
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
I guess all of us were big for my mom. Of course, I was the biggest. She said my head was huge. I ripped her apart. I hear that a lot. It's like, okay, I get
But
it. I'm
you were
sorry.
5 pounds?
No, my son was 5 pounds. I
Oh,
was 9, I believe, and apparently I was huge and I ripped the poor woman open. I've heard that a lot. It's like, okay, sorry. I guess my head was really big.
both of my kids ripped me apart. Brianna
Yeah.
was 8 pounds, 8 ounces, and she was
Wow.
22.5 inches.
Wow.
That was long. Whereas Steffi
That's a big
was
baby.
uh 8'2", and she was 21 and a half or 20 and a half. It's been a long time. I
Oh my
mean, she's 21, so either 20 or 21 and a half inches long. I mean, my kids were long. By the time Brianna was 4 months, I had to switch to
Mhm.
one of those like hybrids where you go from for car seats from infant up to
Yeah.
age 5 or whatever, because she was past the 26-inch length.
Oh, wow.
She
Teresa's son was 11 pounds, 8 ounces. Wow. Mine was 5. He was like a doll. Just this little thing.
Yeah, no, I don't know about my husband. He was, I don't know, 2 months early, so he was like about a pound or two
Mhm.
pounds. When you hear, no, maybe he was a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how big babies are from his side of the family. Hi, Teresa. Okay, okay,
I'm
okay.
glad
Go
you got
ahead.
that fixed, Teresa. Your debit card got turned off. His feet were huge and he wears a size 15 shoe now. Oh my gosh. He's a big boy.
And with Brianna, it's funny because I expected her to even be taller than me. In my
Yeah.
family, on my mom's side, and that's all I knew because my dad only had one sister, so they stayed in Chile. And Brianna's what, 5'4"? I'm 5'8". This is big for the Spanish side. I
Yeah, you're
tower
tall.
over all, and actually even in school, I was early in my height by the time I was 13. I was already 5'8". So
Wow, you were
uh,
tall.
Brianna's, normal size. Both Stephanie. Stephanie's a little bit closer to my height. I believe she was 5'6", but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so my kids are average Spanish height, and I'm the tower here. But my
Yeah.
dad's my aunt, or my great aunt. I mean, she was actually even my dad's cousin and my dad's sister. I know that my dad's great aunt was 6 feet though.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, we all know I got my height from my dad.
Yeah, we're short in our family. I was gonna say same thing, Teresa. I'm 5'3", but I think I shrunk. Apparently, we
Well,
do when
I
we get
think I've
older.
probably shrunk too. I mean, I'm sure by now, especially because, with all the weight,
Yeah.
you're going to get shrunk.
Yeah, I'm really I want to read this part here where he
Go
writes his own story. He's got help though, but I'm just trying to I don't know what's on here. I don't know really know what this picture is. Can you see it? Like what's on here? Looks like maybe his chest and a glove, and I don't see anything else. It's weird. It's like I don't know. I guess I'll have to find out. All right. So this is called My Encounter with the UFO by Stephen McCulloch.
That looks like a backpack in the back, though.
Does it? You think so?
Yeah, because the zippers, I can see zippers there.
Oh, maybe. Oh, I think that is his shirt because it burned through the shirt. Then he was wearing gloves as well, right? And the
Oh,
other,
maybe. Okay.
yeah.
I mean, a black and white photo may look like that, and I have issues with determining. But yeah, that's a glove, and you can see the burns on the glove.
Yeah. Weird.
Definitely. All right. I'm just keeping muted because my husband's going to be home soon, and Fridays are takeout. So I will
Oh,
listen to
okay.
you, but I will
Yeah.
kind of jump in when you good.
Okay. Or if I have a
I'm right here.
question.
Yeah, I'm right here.
All
So
right. Awesome. All right. So this is the author's note. And they said, we have retained Stefan McCulloch's manuscript as it was published in 1967, including any grammatical errors that were missed at the time in order to preserve its authenticity. So he named it the actual person that this happened to, which was Stan McCulloch. He wrote this down in 1967 and he titled it My Encounter with the UFO. I don't know, Teresa. Maybe, I don't know, maybe someone else is live. I have no idea. When I was approached by Stephen McCulloch to write the English version of this story, I was skeptical. So, okay, so the man who was affected in the story, when he saw the aliens in the ship and he got the radiation burns and all that, I know I'm hungry too again, autistic. um, he's Polish. So I just want to mention that. I did not believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life and the phenomenon called UFOs. After helping with English translation of the original Polish manuscript by by Mr. McCulloch, I began to wonder if I had been wrong. I wondered if perhaps there could have been a landing at Falcon Lake on May 20th, 1967. But I still wasn't convinced. I talked to several people mentioned in the book. I read accounts of the sighting, which appeared in the press and in the magazines. And after weighing all facts, I felt sure that Stephen McCulloch did indeed witness the landing of an alien aircraft. A word on the original text. Mr. McCulloch has made notes on his observations and events that followed. Recently, he compiled these into chronological account of what happened in Polish, his native language. His only purpose in doing so was to inform the public of his uncanny occurrence and the strange effects it had upon him. Through talking with him, I have found that he's not a man who would exaggerate or distort or fabricate such a tale. The events described in this book are true. It's interesting to note that the Canadian press carried a report on November 6, 1967, saying that the government of Canada refused to disclose any information they had discovered during investigation of the claims by Mr. McCulloch. See, that makes me think that there's something. I believe the story anyways, regardless.
I did
I know
too,
the
and
story.
that's just it. I
Yeah.
mean, science
Yeah.
minded, grown up, and to not believe in that stuff. Even my
He's just
dad
too
believes in
truthful.
some of it. Yeah, there's always
Like,
truth in
yeah,
some of
I
this,
believe it.
and I've always believed in UFOs. There is just no way that we're alone.
Alone. I agree. Absolutely. So his only purpose in doing so was to inform the public of his uncanny occurrence and strange effects it had upon him. Through talking to him, oh, I just read this. It is interesting to note the Canadian press carried a report. I just read that too. So the government of Canada refused to disclose any information that they had discovered during the investigation of the claims of Mr. McCulloch. In the words of Defense Minister Cadeau, it is not the intention of the Department of National Defense to make public the report of the alleged sighting. Hey, Heavenly Cow. Hey, Deb. Oh, no worries. I figured you were napping. If the investigation had shown that the alleged sighting was pure fabrication, is it not conceivable that the government would have made it known and cleared up any doubts or fears the public may have? But instead, the federal government chose to remain silent. This can mean only two things. Either they have definite proof unknown to Mr. McCulloch and myself, or they know something extraordinary happened but cannot or dare not explain it. It's up to you, the reader, to make your own decision. I definitely believe it. All right, so this is the beginning of the witnesses, I guess, article that he wrote, I would call it. My name is Stephen McCulloch. I was born 51 years ago in Poland. After the turbulent years of the Second War that started in my homeland, and due to the events that followed, I was forced to leave my country and go abroad. In 1949, I came to Canada, and some years later settled in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I live with my wife, two sons, and a daughter in a modest home. I have a steady income from my job as a mechanic at the Inland Cement Company. Two of my children attend the University of Manitoba. We live a happy, satisfied life of average Canadians, fully enjoying all of the blessings this country the country is offering us. Up until the time and the events I'm about to describe, I had no special interest in flying saucers and other strange phenomena one hears about time and again. I heard and read about them, but they meant to me about as much as the Loch Ness monster. Maybe they are real, maybe not, but I had never been seriously concerned about them. Not until May 20th, 1967, when I, perhaps and nobody else, as nobody else, or at least very few, came in such a close contact with one of those strange objects commonly called UFOs. How it all began, how I happened to be in the vicinity of the actual landing of the UFO and my strange encounter with it, will be explained herein. I am what many call an amateur prospector. For many years, mostly early in the spring, this being the most favorable time for prospecting in the wooded and rocky terrain of eastern Manitoba, I go and look for minerals. I have even made a few claims. When the spring of 1967 came, I decided to spend the first long weekend in the White Shill area, lying about 80 miles east of Winnipeg. So early in the evening on Friday, May 19th, I took the Greyhound bus to Falcon Lake, settled down for the night in a motel with the idea of getting up early in the morning and trying my luck, as I said to myself. Little did I know then what kind of luck I was to find the next day. The landing. It was 5:30 a.m. when I left the motel and started out on my geological trek. I took with me a hammer, a map, a compass, paper and pencil, and a little food to see me through the day, wearing a light jacket against the morning chill. The day was bright and sunny, not a cloud in the sky. It seemed like just another ordinary day, but events which were to take place within the next 6 hours were to change my entire life more than anyone could ever imagine. I will never forget May 20th, 1967. Crossing the Trans Canada Highway from the motel on the south side, I made my way into the bush and the pine forest on the north side. After traveling some distance, I got out my map and compass and oriented myself. By 9 o'clock, I had found an area that particularly fascinated me because of the rock formation near a bog along a stream flowing in the southward direction. I was searching for some special specimens that I had found on my earlier expedition. My approach had startled a flock of geese, but before long, they became accustomed to my presence, quieted down, and went about their business. He's lucky he didn't get attacked because the geese can be little assholes, I'm telling you. At 11 o'clock, I began to feel the effects of the breakfast I did not eat that morning. I sat down and took out the lunch that I had brought with me, following a simple meal of smoked sausage, cheese, and bread, and an apple, and two oranges washed down with a couple cups of coffee. And after a short rest, I returned to the quartz vein I was examining. It was 12:15, the sun was high in the sky, and a few clouds were gathering in the west. While chirping at the quartz, I was startled by the most uncanny cackle of the geese that were still in the area. Something had obviously frightened them far more than my presence earlier in the morning when they gave it a mild protest. Then I saw them, two cigar-shaped objects with humps on them, about halfway down the sky. They appeared to be descending and glowing with an intense scarlet glare. As these objects came closer to the earth, they became more oval-shaped. So strange. Hey, Alberta. You and your ramen. Yeah, they are mean suckers. They can be. Oh, yeah. They came down at the same speed, keeping a constant distance between them, appearing to be as one inseparable until yet each one completely separate from the other. Suddenly, the farthest of the two objects, farthest from my point of vision, stopped dead in the air, while its companion slipped down closer and closer to the ground and landed squarely on the flat top of a rock about 160 feet away from me. The object that had remained in the air hovering approximately 15 feet above me for about 3 minutes, then lifted skyward again. As it ascended, its color began to change from bright red to an orange shade, then to gray to a gray tone. Finally, when it was just about to disappear behind the gathering clouds, it again turned bright orange. The craft, if I may be allowed to call it a craft, had appeared and disappeared in such a short time that it was impossible to estimate the length of the time it remained visible. My astonishment at the at my astonishment at and fear of the unusual sight that I had just witnessed dulled my senses and made me lose all realization of time. I cannot describe or estimate the speed of the ascent because I have seen nothing in the world that moves so swiftly, noiselessly, without a sound. The craft. Then my attention was drawn back to the craft that had landed on the rock. It was too changing in color, turning from red to gray, red to light gray, and then to the color of hot stainless steel with a golden glow around it. I realized that I was still kneeling on the rock with my small hammer in my hand. I was still wearing goggles, which I used to protect my eyes from the rock chips. After recovering from my composure and regaining my senses to some degree, I began watching the craft intently, ready to record in my mind everything that happened. I noticed an opening near the top of the craft and a brilliant purple light pouring out of an aperture. The light was so intense that it hurt my eyes when I looked at it directly. Gripped with fear and excitement, I was unable to move from the rock. I decided to wait and watch. Soon I became aware of wafts of warm air that seemed to come out in waves from the craft, accompanied by the pungent odor of sulfur, just like the other book I was reading yesterday. There's that sulfur smell every time. I heard a soft murmur, like the whir of tiny electric motor running very fast. I also heard a hissing sound as if air had been sucked into the interior of the craft. It was now that I wanted a camera more than anything else, but of course, there's no need for one on a geologic expedition. Then I remembered the paper and pencil that I had brought with me. I made a sketch of what I saw. By now, by now, some of the initial fear had left me, and I managed to gather enough courage to get closer to the craft and to investigate. I fully expected someone to get out at any moment and survey the landing site. Because I've never seen anything like this before, I thought it may have been an American space project of some sort. I checked for the markings of the United States Air Force on the hull of the craft, but found nothing. It was most interested in the flood of lights that poured out of the upper reaches of the craft. The light, distinctly purple, also cast various other shades. In spite of the bright midday sun in the sky, the light cast a purple hue on the ground and eclipsed the sunlight in immediate area. I was forced to continually turn my eyes away from the light, which made red dots to appear before my eyes every time I looked away. I approached the object closer, coming to within 60 feet of the glowing mass of metal.
The red
Up,
dots. I have to
yeah,
say the red dots. It's
same with that sulfur smell. It's twice now I've
yeah.
heard that in two different books.
I smelled that sulfur smell a couple times. I don't know how many, but I mean I did.
Wow. And it was at that lake, right?
But there's right in there. There's a whole bunch of campgrounds along. It's quite popular. The White Shell is actually probably one of the most popular places uh,
Yeah.
besides Gimli Beach and Winnipeg Beach. But Yeah, I thought those smells would be maybe, bathrooms with the stuff, but yeah, doesn't
I don't know
seem that.
now.
I mean, the eyes, though, I just have to think that those red eyes are, you know, part of that.
Yeah.
And, you have rocks by Falcon Lake, the rocks, it's already getting rocky a little bit. Not much,
Yeah.
it's more, um, that's just it. So you have all these places that they're probably all around. You just don't know
I
what.
agree.
Yeah.
I know I would never go to Falcon Lake. No
I
way. I
actually would
remember
love
reading
to
this
go.
story
I would love to
many
try
years
and
ago.
go again,
Uh, I
but
won't ever.
not with my kids. I
I
would.
would never go, obviously not alone, but I would never even go with a group of, even if there were scientists and there was, no, I wouldn't go because I've read this, not this book, but I have read this gentleman's story quite a few times. And uh, I believe in aliens and I do not want nothing to do with them. I'm terrified. So I would never go somewhere where there has been activity. No how, no way.
I'm always terrified too. Although I don't feel terrified right now. I mean, like, please, aliens, take me away. After all the
Really?
crazy
Oh, I'm
that's
scared.
but the crazy that's on the world, I mean, I can only imagine. I hope that it would not be worse. But then, all these stories of, these experiments. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably a big fear. And no, I'd be scared that they would hurt my family. Again,
Yes.
when it comes to me, that's probably something I would fear at the moment,
Yeah.
not now. I try and think about it, but when I was out in the bushes and things like that, I was scared. I know
Yeah.
that when
I
I
would.
started smoking, I was 13 and I'd take my dog for a walk, but I would be in the backyard and all in the dark on the back lane. Uh, things didn't scare me in the city, but for some
Yeah.
reason, I had this weird fear of in that area.
That's part of it.
I
Yes.
didn't have
Part of that
that
as well.
everywhere else, just in the West.
Falcon Lake.
I mean, the Falcon Lake. It's uh, uh what's the name of the area? West Hawk Lake, West with all the White Shell Interlake. It's
Okay.
you know, um, I don't. There's I forget what's the name of it. There's actually um a, a place. I forget the name of the campground. I'll have to ask my husband. But
Yeah, I'm
you
not
could
sure.
go. People would go along this trail, and uh, there used to be rocks. You could go do what's called rock sledding with
Okay.
little rushing, river that was just gentle enough for even kids to be on. Of course, I was on there a bit, but to get there, you would have um, crossed a area where it's an indigenous circle or whatever, where um, you offer gifts and you're supposed to
Oh,
receive
okay.
a gift. I don't know much. I just remember that you have that, and uh, that is actually closer to West Hawk Lake. It's all in the
Yeah.
rocky area. So you just have to think that it's, I mean, now
That's
it's not.
weird how anything to do with like in the book I was reading the Mojave incident and now this book, there's indigenous peoples intertwined in both these stories.
Maybe they're trying to get.
Like I want to
I
know what the
mean,
connection is.
you have to have this holy place, for them, and
Yeah.
I wonder. You just gotta wonder if you would hope that they'd be safe. Maybe that's what they're. I forget what it's called. The sacred uh section. Um, and I don't know if I know that we once left something. I think we may have left something before.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, that's right. We went back just to provide that offering. We didn't have anything because we didn't know.
Oh, okay.
We had promised our kids to go there, so
That's really neat to
yeah.
offer something. I didn't know that.
I have to. I think it may be Nunavik Lake. Uh,
I'm not sure. I never heard of it.
yeah, I think it's Nunavik now that I think about it, or close to it. Nunavik.
Well, if your husband, or when you, or ask your husband, or whenever you figure it out, let me know. That's interesting. Oops.
I'm just looking it up. You go ahead and read, and I'll tell you if I
Oh,
find
okay.
something.
I approached the object closer, coming to within 60 feet of the glowing mass of metal. Then I heard voices. They sounded like human, although somewhat muffled by the sounds of the motor and the rush of air that was continuously coming out from somewhere inside. I was able to make out two distinct voices, one with a higher pitch than the other. The latest discovery added to my excitement, and I was sure that the craft was of an earthly origin, so he didn't even think it was a UFO at this point. I came even closer and beckoned to those inside. Okay, Yankee boys, having trouble? Come on out and we'll see what we can do about it. There was no answer and no sign from within. I had prepared myself for some response and was taken aback when none came. I was at a loss, perplexed. I didn't know what to do next. But then, more to encourage myself than anything else, I addressed the voices in Russian, asking them if they spoke Russian. No answer. I tried again in German, Italian, French, and Ukrainian. Still no answer. Holy, he knows a lot of languages. Then I spoke again in English. While closer to the craft, by now I found myself directly in front of it and decided to take a look inside. However, standing within the beam of light was too much for my eyes to bear. I was forced to turn away. Then, placing green lenses over my goggles, I stuck my head inside the opening. The inside was a maze of lights, direct beams running in horizontal and diagonal paths, and a series of flashing lights. It seemed to me were working in a random fashion with no particular order or sequence. Again, I stepped back and awaited some reaction from the craft. As I did this, I took note of the thickness of the walls of the craft. They were about 20 inches thick at the cross section. Then, the first sign of motion since the craft touched down. Two panels slid over the opening, and a third piece dropped over them from above. This completely closed off the opening inside of the craft. Then I noticed a small screen pattern on the side of the craft. It seemed to be some sort of ventilation system. The screen openings appeared to be about 3/16 of an inch in diameter. I approached the craft once again and touched its side. It was hot to touch. It appeared to be made of a steel-like substance. There were no signs of a welding or joints to be seen anywhere. The outer surface was highly polished and looked like colored glass with light reflecting off it. It formed a spectrum with a silver background as the sunlight hit their sides. I noticed that I had burned my glove as I was wearing it at the time when I touched the side of the craft. And that is when this comes in. That's the burnt glove. It's scary. It's that hot. These most recent events occurred in less time than it takes to describe them. All of a sudden, the craft tilted slightly leftward. I turned and felt scorching pain around my chest. My shirt and my undershirt were afire. A sharp beam of heat that shot from the craft. I tore off my shirt and undershirt and threw them to the ground. My chest was severely burned. When I looked back at the ship, I felt a sudden rush of air around me. The craft was rising above the treetops. It began to change color and shape. following much the same pattern as its sister ship when it had returned to the sky. Soon the craft had disappeared, gone without a trace. I'll be right back. I'm gonna put something on here for a second. I need to use the phone booth. Okay, sorry about that, but I really had to go. Is this a different book than you have been reading? Yes, I just started it. This one is from Canada. Aftermath. As I stood there with 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind, I was unable to move or act. I was taken aback by fear and bewilderment. It was hard to believe that these things actually happened to me. Reason told me that it had to be some earthly thing, but evidence pointed out to something else. I recalled as I stood gazing at the rock where only seconds ago the craft had sat. An article I once read in Life magazine. It told of other civilizations on other planets, other worlds. At the time, I took it with a grain of salt, believing it to be the result of someone's fertile imagination. Now I began to wonder whether these were not some foundation for it after all. The odor that reminded me of an odor of burning electric motor mixed with strong smell of sulfur still hung in the air. Looking down, I noticed some dry moss burning near my discarded shirts. Automatically, I stamped at the fire with my feet. The woods were extremely dry, and a fire now could possibly trap me. It was so hot that it caught fire. His shirt caught fire. That's crazy. Again, I turned my thought to the events and scenes I just witnessed. Walking over to the rock where I had left my bag and compass, I began to pick up my things. When I looked at the compass, I saw the needle whirling around, completely out of control, as if some strange magnetic force had been controlling it. Seconds later, it became still, working normally. I've heard that before as well when it comes to compasses. When there's apparently I don't know, like UFOs or aliens or anything like that, like it just spins. I have heard that before. Somehow my desire for prospecting had vanished. I decided to go over to the landing site and make a thorough inspection of the place where the craft had touched down. As I approached the site, I felt nauseated and my head began to ache. The spot where the craft had come to rest looked as if it had been swept clean with a broom. There was no debris of any kind on the rock, no twigs, bits of stone, nothing. It all had been piled up in 6 inches deep circular mound, about 15 feet in diameter. As I stood there examining the spot, the pain in my head became more severe. Waves of nausea increased, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I knew that something totally unnatural had happened to me, and apparently it was having adverse effect on my psychology. I might add that up to this time, I had been as healthy as any man could expect to be. My weight was a constant 180 pounds, and I had not been sick a day in the last 25 years. The only time I went to a doctor was for the regular insurance company checkups. Now it was obvious that something was wrong, very wrong. I vomited, a feeling of weakness and coming over me, and I became really alarmed. I knew that I must get back to civilization as soon as possible. I think he has radiation poisoning. I returned to the place where I was when all this happened and gathered up my equipment. Then I started walking back towards the highway at Falcon Lake. The ordeal. I had not gone far when I was forced to stop and vomit. Again and again and again, and my stomach heaved and swayed. My mouth was hot and dry. The pain in my head got worse. All the food I consumed was gone from my stomach, but I continued to vomit green bile. The same kind of pink dots that appeared in front of my eyes when I looked at the light and the craft returned. I came upon the brook. I had just passed on my way into the area. Bending down, I slapped water all over my face and my head. I had to remain conscious. To stop now, what would be fatal? Using the compass was impossible. I couldn't make out the direction of the needle because it was unable to see straight. Instead, I searched for some familiar landmarks. With great effort in every step, I made my way in what I hoped was the right direction, praying that every step would bring me closer to safety. It's in Canada. I had to continue stopping every so often to vomit. The ever worsening splitting headache added to my misery. Now I felt a burning on my chest. Red marks had appeared where the blast from the craft touched me and burnt my shirt. Some spots were as large as silver dollars. I removed my jacket because it irritated the sores when the cloth touched them. I kept on walking, naked from the waist up. For long, I was to experience another chilling fright. I saw an unfamiliar patch which I had not seen before. I thought I became lost. But, I reasoned, the path may lead me to the highway. I prayed that it would. I began to follow it and soon heard cars passing by the road. I was desperately in need of medical attention. Sweat ran down into my eyes. I could hardly see where I was going as I stumbled along the path and finally got into the highway. You're welcome. Manitoba, to be exact. As I stood there catching my breath, I began wondering how could ever explain the thing I'd just seen and experienced. My wife and children would never believe me. And what about my neighbors and friends? It was so unearthly, so unbelievable, like an apparition. How could I defend myself? Should people say I was crazy? Hundreds of thoughts flashed through and puzzled my mind. It was impossible to decide there and then what to do. I knew I must get help fast. That was my concern at the moment. I knew there was an RCMP detachment at Falcon Lake. There, I hoped I could at least get some medical attention and aid and care. Besides, it was my duty to report to the authorities what I had witnessed. I walked out onto the highway and discovered that I was almost a mile west of the point where I'd entered the woods that morning. I directed my steps eastward, hardly able to move my feet. I made some small progress, growing weaker with every step. My heartbeat quickened when I saw an RCMP car approaching. I raised and waved my hand frantically, but the car passed by without stopping. I was amazed at their apparent indifference to my signaling. Wow. The only thing to do was to continue walking. I made very slow progress. My stomach was still churning and my head was pounding like a drum. My only thought was to get to Falcon Lake as soon as possible. The odor of burning electric motor and sulfur lingered around me, constantly bringing back to my mind the things I had seen. As I staggered along the roadside, I heard a voice calling me. Turning, I saw RCMP constable. Briefly, I gave him an account of what had happened, warning him not to come too close to me because I feared the possibility of spreading radiation. I asked about medical aid. Sorry, but I have duties to perform here, he said. I stared at him, unbelieving what I had just heard. He apparently did not believe a word I told him. Otherwise, he would have acted differently. The constable left me with my sickness and disappointment. Yet I thought every human being, no matter how small or how great, has at one time or another found within himself great ambition to accomplish what seems to be impossible. I knew that for me, such a time had come now. As long as I was within the sight of my motel at Falcon Lake, my journey took every ounce of strength I had left in me. By the time I reached the motel, I was totally exhausted. I did not go inside the motel for fear of contaminating people around me. I remained outside in the woods nearby. I felt detached from the rest of the world. All my strength was gone, and the pain in my head reached the limits of human endurance. My eyes felt as if they were bulging out from my head, and the pain was unbearable when I turned my head to look around. With every breath, the stench of sulfur returned. I took a deep breath, trying to rid myself of the foul smell and the nausea it brought about, but it didn't help. The odor seemed to come from within me, and I could not escape it. I was afraid that I had ruined my health and visualized the resulting health should I become disabled. To the exclusion of everything else, my mind centered upon the possible consequences flowing out of what had just happened. The pains continued and began more severe than ever. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, I could stand it no longer. I got out, went to the motel's restaurant, asking a waitress if a doctor was available. She said that the resident physician would not arrive until July and that the nearest doctor was in Kenora, Ontario, 45 miles east of Falcon Lake. With the latest setback, I had no alternative but to go to my room and rest. There had to be some way of getting medical aid and attention. I thought of the press. Things that happened to me were definitely news, if nothing else. So I contacted the Winnipeg Tribune, only to find that I had again drawn a blank. It was Saturday afternoon, and there was no one in the office who could have helped me. Large and small pink spots appeared on my chest as the results of burns I received from the heat of the craft. I did not want to alarm my wife or cause panic in the family. I phoned her at a last resort, telling her that I had been in an accident and that I had suffered some burns to my chest. We arranged to have my mom, sorry, my son Mark, meet me at the bus depot in Winnipeg later that evening. Now, at least I seemed to be getting a little closer to safety. Returning to my room, I packed and checked out, only to find that I had 4 hours to wait for the bus. I felt sick, very sick, and cold and hot and cold again. I put on a sweater and an overcoat, but the chills kept reoccurring. I left for the bus stop long before the bus was due to arrive, not wanting to mix the with people because of the possibility of spreading my radiation. I waited in the background. As I sat on a tree stump on the boulevard, suffering pain and the stench and the colored spots all around me, I began to reflect upon my life. Flashing through my mind were horrors of the war and its total disregard of human life, its valor and its cowardice. I recalled instances when I had closer brushes with death and survived. This thought comforted me, and I felt that somehow I'll pull through my present harrowing experience. After what seemed like an eternity, the bus arrived. I boarded it and gave my ticket to the driver. He looked at me the way one looks at a drunk. I could almost feel what went on in his mind, but he had no idea how utterly wrong he was. I moved to the rear of the bus, hoping to separate myself from the other passengers by the greatest possible distance. I wanted no contact with people now. It was a relief to know that I would be home soon. My eldest son Mark met me at the Winnipeg bus depot at 10:15 that evening and took me directly to the hospital. The scrutiny. A doctor examined the burns on my chest and gave me a sedative. He asked me how I got burnt. Excuses flashed through my mind, and I told him that I had been hit by exhaust coming out of an aeroplane. At this point, I must explain the reason for contradicting the recent events and avoid confusing the reader. The doctor who treated me was of Chinese origin, and while being a fine and competent physician, I am sure he was not too well versed in the English language, and neither am I. I felt that there could be some misunderstanding, and what's more, I did not feel up to relating the whole story just then. I was thinking how to get home as soon as possible without any delay that my true revelation might have caused. Besides, the pain I was suffering was too much for me to go through it all again. My son took me home. After a bath, I took a sedative and went to bed, hoping that morning will bring a brighter day. The following day proved to be no better. The pain was just as bad, the awful stench still lingered in my lungs, and the dots still danced in front of my eyes. The vomiting had stopped. It was quite a relief. Strangely, I was not hungry. I realized that I had not eaten since I seen the crabs in the woods the day before. At first, I drank a little tea, proved useless. No sooner had I swallowed it when I began to vomit again. This poor guy is so tortured. I mean,
All right, I think I got it. It's I believe it is part of the it's called Pine Falls Rapids, and areas actually I believe closer to West Hawk Lake. You've got the rocks already, and that's there's a little opening there where you could go rock sliding. Although this was before we had all so much rain in that area that it kind of flooded it, and you can't really do that now because it's too much water, so it's not safe anymore.
yeah.
But yeah, and that's where some mining was done. There you go.
Well, thank you for
It's
that.
huh?
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to look up both. Um, look up the Pine Falls
Pine Falls,
Pine
right?
Point, sorry, Pine Point, uh, Falls and Pine Point Trail, as well as uh, Vi- Viburnum. I don't think it's these falls, but they're kind of connected. Maybe that was the one that we went through because we just had a short walk. I don't know how long. I could never do that now, but yeah. So Viburnum, and I believe we went through the Pine Point trails, and
I'm
it's
looking at it now. It's beautiful.
yeah, it is that area. And
Oh,
there's like in the rock area, you got um a little notice about explaining, and I believe it's the I forget Abish Connie indigenous. I'm not sure how to say the name, but yes,
yeah,
there's I believe it's them that have a little circle, and I remember them saying it's a spiritual area, and to
gorgeous.
leave offerings. So
Yeah,
people leave clothes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of nice. You should go visit the White Shell. It is a
that I
beautiful
would go.
area.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
And there's a
and
cabin with picnic tables. And apparently, you see lots of wildlife, snapping turtles, deer, rabbit, squirrels, baby groundhogs.
well,
Wow, waterfalls. Holy cow.
how far away are you from the Manitoba border?
I have no idea. I'm in Ontario.
Yeah,
Uh,
Manitoba and
close.
Ontario border though, because that's
Yeah, I don't know actually. I'm in Prescott. So I'm in between Kingston and Ottawa.
yeah. You're probably I know that seems like you're quite far away.
Yeah, I'm pretty
What's
sure
the
I
name
am.
of it? P.
Prescott, Pre, um,
Okay,
SOTT.
Prescott.
No,
Yeah,
COTT.
no. Uh, we'll just say White Shell, make it easier. Or let's say Falcon Lake.
Yeah, he was a war vet, so if he went to a big hospital later, they would think he's really crazy. Exactly.
Alert. ABC
Oops,
7.
sorry. I
It's
have
okay.
my notifications turned on, but I guess my uh, audio isn't. Uh, oh, there you go. That would be. Oh yeah, yeah. It's only 21 hours for
Oh,
you.
that's fine. I can walk that in a day.
Meanwhile, I mean, Falcon Lake for me is about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I figured it'd be far from me.
Yeah, much farther.
That's really far.
One day we'll have to get together somewhere and
Yeah.
all right, go ahead and read. I'm gonna keep eating.
Yeah, I won't keep you guys much longer. I'll stop at 8:30. Sorry, I'll read this last one. The scrutiny. A doctor examined the burns on my chest and gave me a sedative. I already read that. My son took me home. After a bath, I took a sedative and went to bed. Strangely, I was not hungry, and I realized I had not eaten since I had seen the craft in the woods the day before. At first, I drank a little tea proved useless. No sooner had I drank it, I began vomiting again. I weighed myself and found that I had lost 6 pounds since yesterday. Wow. More cause for concern. The throbbing pain in my head persisted no matter how I sat or lay down. Only the loyal supporter and understanding of my family sustained my strength and lifted my spirit. In the evening, Miss Heather Chisvin, Winnipeg Tribune reporter, together with a photographer, came to the house. I didn't realize, as I recounted the events of the previous day, that this was the beginning of a long series of questions and harassment by the press, radio, television, the Air Force, and various authorities. Poor guy. I did not sleep that night. Nevertheless, I felt a little better the next morning. I had never taken any medicines before, but now I decided to try some 292s. I took two of them, but they did not seem to do much good. My wife called our family doctor, Dr. R.D. Otway. I repeated to him the whole story. He looked at me with what one may call professional discretion and told me to eat some sugar and salt. He also prescribed some seasickness tablets and more 292s. He said the burns were only first degree and not too serious, except for the one that was more severe and would require a little more care. The seasickness tablets seemed to do the most good. They relieved my headache somewhat. Later, Dr. Otway left me in care of his colleague, Dr. B.C. Shaw. He also said that I should go to a medical arts center in Winnipeg for blood tests. After Dr. Shaw had become acquainted with my case and after studying my burns, he gave me an antibacterial skin cleanser and an ointment. Meanwhile, the news of my encounter with the unknown object had spread throughout the city. One of the people who took a special interest in the case was Barry Thompson of the APRO. After hearing my story, he stated his belief that the craft was not an earthly creation. He persuaded me to take blood and radiation tests. I was grateful to Mr. Thompson because he was the first person who took my story seriously. He showed me that he knew quite a lot about such matters. Other people I talked to were skeptical, but I don't blame them, for I would have had doubts myself if someone else told me the same story. Soon the telephone calls began. It seemed that everyone in Winnipeg wanted information about the UFO that I had seen. In my state of health, I could not answer all the calls, so my son Mark took up the task. Many calls were from people who were sympathetic to my situation, and I was grateful to them. I only regret that I could not remember all their names. However, a number of names do linger in my memory. There was Mary Lou Armstrong of the University of Colorado, officials of the BBC and CBC, Professor James MacDonald of the University of Tucson, representatives of the Winnipeg Free Press and the Winnipeg Tribune, and many others. During this time, my health made little progress. The most interesting thing was that I did not feel hungry. I had no desire to eat, and I continued to lose weight. I started making a chart and keeping a record of the state of my health. The news of what I had seen was spreading rapidly around the world. Articles appeared in newspapers and other publications. Some accounts gave validity to my story, others were quite skeptical. I was afraid I think, of ridicule more than anything else. Press investigations did not stop at my own home. Reporters went out to my friends and neighbors asking if they thought I was a stable person, whether I drank a lot, and whether I was the type who bragged and boasted a lot. Then came the official investigations, the RCMP and the RCAF. Men whom I did not know and never expected to meet came to my door. They too had many questions to ask. What was my domestic life like? Why was I in the woods at the time? Somehow, people seemed to have genuine interest in my experience, and I enjoyed talking to them. I was amused by some people who came to quiz me. One could read their characteristics clearly just by the type of questions they asked. Some would say, "Why didn't you run?" or "Why didn't you enter the craft?" or "Weren't you afraid?" I would have been. By evening, following the incident, I was totally exhausted. I could talk to people no longer. I refused to answer the telephone. I tried to break off contact with the outside world. This action only succeeded in creating discontent amongst the public. I began to be regarded as an ignorant, antisocial creature. My detractors and critics would not know how I felt, could not appreciate what I was going through. They couldn't know. A soldier who has taken part in a battle, who has seen death and suffering, can tell his story, and no matter how true it may be or how much emotion he may put into it, there will still be an element of disbelief in the listener. The masses cannot understand an individual. They listen, pass it on, and forget it. This is how it was in my case. Not everyone knew what I was going through. During the next few days, I saw Dr. Otway and Dr. Shaw, radiologist Dr. T.D. Craddock, and a skin specialist, Dr. S.S. Berger. On May 22nd, Mr. Thompson, in consultation with Dr. Craddock, sent me to a National Atomic Research Center at Pinawa, Manitoba. I was examined for radiation. After the examination, I was told that I was not suffering from radiation and was in no danger. Slowly, my health improved. If only they got to him sooner, they probably would have noticed that he had radiation poisoning. I guarantee that's what it was. On June 4th, Dr. Roy Craig of the University of Colorado and John Freed of Life magazine called upon me. Together with Mr. Thompson, we went to Falcon Lake to try and find the what, sorry?
You have to hear this.
What?
Okay, I forgot all about this. It just didn't hit my mind. There is now um, closed off nuclear plant that had an accident from Pinawa, and I forget
Oh,
what
wow.
the accident was. Believe it was a radiation type accident, and now I just gotta wonder if maybe it was this. I'm
Yeah.
looking at it. Nuclear power plant. When was it shut down? Accident, I guess. Um, let's see when it was. Oh, it's. I guess they still. Uh, Chernobyl. But there was a accident overheating or whatever, and they had to seal it off with concrete.
Holy crap. Was this about the same time? Because this is what, 1967 this happened to him.
I don't remember what year, but it was quite a long time ago. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on. It might have been opened. Planned to entomb Manitoba's nuclear waste worries uh, environmentalists, and this was a proposed radioactive waste disposal site. Uh, it called Chalk River.
Chalk River.
Manitoba's high level radioactive waste act states that no person shall store and stuff like that. I'm just looking. I found that in the uh, when I looked for it. But yeah, there was an accident, and I'll have to again ask, but I believe it was in the 1960 era.
Oh my God. Wow.
19. What was this one? 1967. You said?
Yep. This one was 1967. I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, May 20th, 1967.
I know what I'll do.
Wow. So they would say it was okay. So I'm wondering, I don't know, that's gotta be linked. Good eye. If you find an article or something, send it to me and then I'll show it next time.
And see operations at the former White Shell Laboratories in Pinoa. Old nuclear facility. Oh, shit. Winnipeg Free Press crap. Can't. I'd
Yeah.
have to sign in. But that's. I'll see what I can find for you. Are
Yeah.
you gonna keep reading or?
No, I'm probably gonna end it because I've been in here for an hour and a half. But if you're not busy tomorrow, what I'll do is every time I read this book, it'll always be at 7 p.m. at night, Eastern Standard Time. I don't know, I might read it tomorrow. Are you able to tomorrow?
Uh, I'd have to check to see if there's any. You know what? I'll be okay unless Aaron goes live. Um,
Okay.
I'll be okay because the other person I mod for, she's got lots of mods. She'll be
Oh,
fine if I don't uh, get there. And then there's Steve, so I think
oh
that
yeah.
will be fine. Tomorrow's good.
All right. So we'll do it again at 7. I know, I want to read the whole thing, but I can't. I gotta wait.
It's okay, and I talk a lot, so I can always help point stuff out, like
Yeah,
you
no,
just
if you
did.
yeah, 'cause like what you just did, exactly, with the
Yeah.
pin oh wow.
So yeah, maybe you can also look up Pinawa Mount. Just go try
I'm going
looking
to.
for maybe even Manitoba nuclear plant accident. Pinawa nuclear accident. There was one in 2008. It happened in Pinawa.
It says it was established in 1963 as a research laboratory.
Ah.
Huh.
Well, that's quite interesting. I'll kind of
It
try to
is.
do some research for you because I've got
Yeah,
my
this is a
time.
few years before this guy's incident. So this was 63. So it looks like White Shell Laboratories.
I just have to remember when the accident was. Maybe it was a much
Yeah.
later, but I mean, the fact that there's a nuclear facility in the White Shell area at Pinawa
Yeah.
explains
That's interesting.
a lot. Yeah, definitely interesting. Okay, I'll let you keep talking here.
Yeah, I'm probably just gonna get off of here. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
we'll do this again.
yeah, don't worry if you need to guide me back into what you're doing because I need that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right, everyone, thank you for coming.
Thank you guys, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.